The criminal incident that occurred in the city of Perth, Western Australia, over the Easter weekend on April 12, 2020, where 66-year-old Maree Collins and her 62-year-old brother Wayne Johnson were subjected to a brutal attack and murder, was swiftly solved within a few days. However, despite the quick resolution, it generated widespread resonance in society, shocking not only the relatives and close ones of the victims but also the seasoned police officers involved in the investigation. Maree Collins, residing in the city of Perth, Western Australia, was a respected elderly woman in the community. She was highly regarded among the local church community, of which she was an active participant. Maree was known for her kindness and responsiveness, always ready to help those in need. An elegant woman with refined taste and a keen understanding of fashion trends, she also worked part-time at a nearby clothing store. Maree lived in her own apartment, consisting of 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, with a beautiful balcony view. The apartment was located in the prestigious Washington Gardens area on Leonard Street, southeast of downtown Perth. Unfortunately, Maree's husband passed away in 2001 when he was still quite young, leaving her childless. Despite this, she led a very active life, and her home was a welcoming place for her numerous friends and relatives. In 2020, Maree decided to renovate her residence, demonstrating her proficiency in new technologies and being well acquainted with various gadgets and computers. She regularly communicated with friends and family through social media. Therefore, they became deeply concerned when, on Easter Sunday, April 12, 2020, they received no messages from her. Attempts to contact her by phone went unanswered. The day before, on Saturday, April 11, Maree had coffee at a cafe near her home, visited the beach, and saw her sister Helen Bathina. She returned home around noon and sent a message with peculiar content. "Hello Helen. Sorry for not answering your call. I'm not feeling well, and I've lost my voice." After 1 p.m., she ceased all communication. Losing contact with her sister, Helen Bathina, who was concerned about her silence, called her brother Wayne Johnson, who lived just a few blocks away from Maree with his 12-year-old son and could visit his sister to find out what was going on. Worried, Wayne texted Maree and also received no response. He told Helen that he was heading to Maree's place and would stay in constant communication, but after a while, he too stopped answering phone calls and SMS. Growing even more alarmed, Helen decided to go to her sister's apartment, asking her son-in-law to accompany her. When they approached the residential complex, they saw Maree and Wayne's cars in the parking lot, a troubling sign. Meeting Maree's neighbor and sharing their concerns and suspicions, all 3 went to the woman's apartment. Helen had a spare key to her sister's apartment, and all 3 easily entered. However, when they crossed the threshold, a horrifying scene unfolded before them. The apartment was drenched in blood, knives, latex gloves, a large piece of tarpaulin, beer bottles, and protein shake containers were scattered around. Most importantly, they saw the lifeless bodies of Maree and Wayne lying on the floor. In a state of shock, all 3 immediately left the apartment and called the police, who arrived promptly and began the investigation. Upon examining the apartment, investigators confirmed that Maree and Wayne had been subjected to a very brutal attack. Bloody shoe prints were found all over the floor, and the broken and scattered furniture throughout the apartment indicated that the victims had resisted their assailant. A thorough inspection revealed that the likely weapons used in the bloody massacre were 2 sets of handcuffs, a stun gun, a bread knife, a large hunting knife, and a letter opener. Medical experts determined that Maree had suffered 12 knife wounds and a throat cut, while Wayne had 25 knife wounds and at least 10 stab wounds. Additionally, on the handle of the bloodied stun gun, DNA belonging to both Maree Collins and the presumed murderer was found. Commencing the investigation on hot leads, the police discovered that there were no signs of forced entry into the apartment. Given that the apartment was on the 8th floor, the theory of the perpetrator entering through a window seemed unlikely. Detectives formulated two hypotheses regarding the killer's entry into the residence: either the perpetrator had their own key, or Maree was acquainted with the individual and trusted them enough to let them into the apartment. Investigators began questioning Maree's friends and relatives to determine their whereabouts at the time of the crime. They also interviewed neighbors who lived nearby. The police conducted a thorough inspection of the surrounding area and the parking lot, jotting down the license plate numbers of parked cars and peering inside through windows. In one of the vehicles, a receipt from a local hardware store issued on Saturday, April 11, at 1843, was discovered. The receipt listed items such as blue tarpaulin and rope. Checking the car's registration number against the database, investigators identified the owner as 29-year-old Luke Fawcett, who resided in the same building as the attack's victims. In Luke Fawcett's police record, data on 2 convictions for possession of controlled substances and several traffic violations were found, but nothing more. Suspecting Luke Fawcett's involvement in the crime, detectives began surveillance and learned that on the day of Maree and Wayne's murder, Luke sought medical assistance at a hospital. His grandmother had driven him there after he informed her that he had injured himself with a knife while falling down a staircase. The police invited Luke to the station for questioning, where he denied any involvement in the crime and willingly provided a DNA sample. At this stage, investigators lacked sufficient grounds for the suspect's arrest, so they continued their search for evidence. Police reviewed surveillance camera footage at the hardware store, discovering that on Saturday evening, April 11, around 20:43, Luke appeared on camera purchasing rope and blue tarpaulin. Additionally, one of the neighbors confirmed seeing a man behaving suspiciously near his apartment on that day, walking back and forth in the corridor, crying, sighing, and the neighbor took a photo of him, revealing Luke. DNA samples from the suspect were soon obtained, and they matched the blood traces in Maree's apartment. This crucial evidence led to Luke's official arrest on April 13, 2020, for the murders of Maree Collins and Wayne Johnson. Continuing their investigation, the police found out that Luke Fawcett was a reserved boy in his childhood with very few friends. Despite this, he managed to graduate from school with one of the top results in his class and enrolled at the University of Western Australia, where he studied psychology. He juggled his studies while working part-time at a nightclub. On the surface, Luke made a very positive impression. He appeared to be a successful and friendly young man. After completing his education, Luke began working in a disability support service. He also had a girlfriend, and they were planning to move in together. Luke's career was on an upward trajectory. He rapidly climbed the professional ladder, earning trust and respect from those around him. He had every chance to defend his degree in psychology. For several years, Luke rented a one-bedroom apartment in the same building where Maree Collins lived, and they had developed good neighborly relations. He occasionally visited her, helped with household chores, rearranged furniture in the apartment, and taught her computer skills. However, at the beginning of 2020, several unpleasant incidents occurred in Luke's life that seriously impacted the course of events. It all began with Luke experiencing frequent panic attacks, losing satisfaction from his work, and being diagnosed with anxiety disorder and depression. His behavior became increasingly strange. After quarreling with colleagues at work, he resigned, leading to a complete breakdown in his relationship with his girlfriend. Faced with ongoing health and relationship issues, Luke turned to alcohol and illicit substances, combining them with antidepressant medication. Losing his steady income, he began facing financial difficulties, stopped paying for accommodation, and was at risk of being evicted from his apartment. After obtaining a search warrant for Luke Fawcett's apartment and car, as well as seizing his phone, the police continued their investigation, and what they found there left everyone in shock. It turned out that Maree's murder was not a random act. Luke had been planning it for a long time. 2 handwritten notes, both authored by Fawcett, were discovered in the apartment. One was labeled as a to-do list, detailing what and how he should execute, and the other was titled Equipment, listing items required for the crime, such as silent shoes, a baseball bat, cable ties, pepper spray, a stun gun, and handcuffs. Investigators also found that a week before the murder, the young man had purchased a shovel at the same hardware store. In the confiscated mobile phone, a video recorded approximately 2 weeks earlier was found, showing Luke Fawcett dressed in a black suit and mask, holding a knife in one hand and a stun gun in the other, seemingly rehearsing the impending murder. Files with recordings made during the actual murder were also discovered on the phone, with names like interrogation, beating, pepper spray to the eyes, etc. Additionally, a screenshot of a map was found, leading the police to a forest approximately 200 kilometers south of Perth, where a freshly dug grave was discovered. Luke had prepared it in advance for his victim, along with a shovel and a black bag containing the same protein shake bottles found in Maree Collins's apartment. During the court proceedings, Fawcett denied his involvement in his neighbor's death and claimed he found her body wrapped in blue tarpaulin at her home. He asserted that an unknown man, who also attacked him, was the real killer. However, he admitted to stabbing Wayne Johnson, alleging self-defense, as Wayne attacked him after seeing his sister's lifeless body, mistakenly believing that Luke was the perpetrator and began choking him. He explained his shoulder injury, sustained during their altercation, through this confrontation with Wayne Johnson. Fawcett told the court that he hesitated to call the police because he feared nobody would believe him. "I was afraid that I would be blamed for the deaths of both these people," he said. Regarding the video found on his phone, Luke claimed it was part of a role-playing video game, and the threatening videos and shopping lists were unrelated to the murder that occurred in his neighbor's apartment. The prosecution, however, was adamant, asserting that it was Luke Fawcett who, in the second half of the day on Saturday, April 11, 2020, entered Maree's apartment, shocked her with a stun gun, and inflicted more than 12 knife wounds on her. At the time when the woman was already dead, the young man, taking advantage of her apartment, calmly took a shower, drank beer and a protein cocktail, started messaging a woman he recently met, sending her photos from the apartment, boasting that he lives in a luxurious flat he recently acquired. He then went to the hardware store, where he bought tarpaulin and rope, and upon returning to the apartment, continued drinking beer and cocktails throughout the night. When Wayne entered his sister's apartment the next morning and saw Luke and what he had done, a brutal fight ensued between the men, which ended as tragically for Wayne as it did for his sister. As a result of this altercation, Wayne Johnson suffered 25 knife wounds, including in the head, chest, and abdomen. Realizing that Luke had received several knife wounds and a dislocated collarbone during the fight, Wayne asked his grandmother to take him to the hospital, lying about the circumstances leading to the injury. While Luke stood in the corridor, calling his grandmother, and then waited for her, crying and mumbling in pain, a neighbor took a photo of the suspicious guy. Prosecutor Justin Wally presented evidence that Luke, proficient in computers, attempted to access Maree's bank accounts through her computer while in the apartment, and this, along with the desire to take possession of her flat, served as the motive for the murder. Wayne Johnson, on the other hand, became a random victim as he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, merely intending to visit his sister. Forensic psychiatric examination declared Luke Fawcett mentally competent, although his brazen and provocative behavior in the apartment, drinking beer and cocktails while Maree Collins lay dead on the floor wrapped in tarpaulin, remains inexplicable. In September 2021, the jury that rejected Luke Fawcett's claims found him guilty of the double murder of Maree Collins and Wayne Johnson after a 30-minute deliberation. Before sentencing, prosecutor Justin Wally stated that Fawcett displayed callous indifference at the highest level and the highest degree of depravity that defies adequate description. As a result, Fawcett was sentenced to 2 life terms with a minimum of 34 years before he becomes eligible for parole, potentially reaching the age of 61 by that time. After the trial, Helen Bathina, the sister of the victims who discovered their bodies, read a statement on behalf of the family. The statement expressed that, despite justice prevailing, it wouldn't bring back their 2 loved ones and wouldn't erase the pain and suffering they endured since the Easter weekend of 2020. She also mentioned that the 22 months of investigation and court proceedings felt like the family's worst nightmare and would never end, as the empty chairs at the family table will always be a constant reminder of the absence of beloved family members and the nightmare they had to endure. In turn, Fawcett's grandparents, Heather and Philip Rogers, who were also present during the sentencing, stated that over the last 2 years, they rarely communicated with their grandson and had no idea where he had been and what he was doing. The heinous murder he committed shocked them, and they said, "What he did is just unbelievable, none of us can understand it. Despite this, we will support Luke because he still remains a member of our family." Friends, share your thoughts on this shockingly cruel story in the comments, and don't forget to like this video if you found it compelling. Thank you for watching.